Started. Hey, good evening. Uh, this is Ron, and we hope you guys had a great day today. Yeah, okay. Hope you guys had a great day today. And uh, yesterday I thought was pretty interesting, especially at the end of that. So, uh, you any questions or comments? If not, I like to go back there. But we usually have questions on Monday, so let's see where we are. Anybody questions or comments on anything going on in the world? What's going on in your life? Nobody? Kathy, you don't have a question?
I'm in
Okay.
here in the gym listening, so I can't talk. I got you on mute.
Okay. You get your
All
work
right, I'll
out
be
in.
leaving out in a minute, but
Okay.
I'm listening. All right.
Uh, guys, yesterday, we talk about a lot of things, and I think we all would probably agree by now that we know that it's not haphazard the questions or anything any other topic they may come up. Uh, so with George's comment yesterday, it wasn't really a question, but I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I like to look at that again and see if we can because a couple of things I wrote down is you know the African does not need anyone to help us survive, and and Barbara answered the first. I wrote this down, and Barbara was answering it. No one was need to get rid of the European or anybody for that matter. Uh, that's not what the path that what we're learning. That's not what truth is telling us to do or desiring to do. That's not what the commitment to love and forgiveness is about. So uh, as we were I was thinking about this today. One term that's kind of stuck out to me. Uh, I was just doing some research. I actually started last night and looking at this, and it kind of hit me this morning. But are you guys familiar with the term Stockholm syndrome? The Stockholm syndrome talks about someone who may be held captive or someone who's being abused or mistreated, and you develop a bond or develop an attachment of some kind. It may be sympathy or it may be other emotions to that person who's abusing you. And I just got to thinking about that. And I wonder, does that apply here? Um, I think I was, Pastor and me were talking, I was telling him about a friend of mine who had done some DNA testing, and the person was saying that whatever percentage, and I think it was like 38% Nigerian or something like that. I can't remember, but his friends, some of the guys made fun of it. Didn't it wasn't a big deal to them, and it was a big deal to him. And it's almost as though we are ashamed of being Africans. We are not comfortable with who we are. And can it be that we have developed not a liking, but a comfort level of being considered second class or not quite good enough? Um, what do you guys think about that?
I would like for others to speak, but I definitely would love to address it at some point.
Ron, this is Ramel. Ask the question one more time, please.
Well, I'm wondering, our relationship with the European has grown to the point where we have reached a place that we're comfortable with being not good enough or not equal to. And are we ashamed of being African? Are we ashamed of who we are and our culture? Uh, yeah, I'll let it stay there. I use the term Stockholm syndrome just as a starting point because it sort of fits what we're talking about. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Does it make sense now, Ramel?
It does. And from my perspective, my experience, let me say, I would have to say, when I look back at myself, having thought about this since we've been talking about this in different various ways, that I think having grown up military around whites, I think I do and still do suffer from feeling second class or not accepted. I think I'm answering your question. But the more I look at generations younger than me, like my children and my children's children, I'm sensing something different with them. But with me, I still struggle with accepting myself as, I think a lot of my learning, part of it angers me, part of it I think I'm very fortunate, but the new part of me is saying, you've been bamboozled. And for that, I'm kind of still pissy about it. Like, I really have to remind myself, try not to fall into that thought. But that's been my experience. I've had the experience of not being Black enough for some Blacks, but being too Black for whites. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you. I appreciate your honesty.
Thank you.
And
I sort of feel like Vernell too.
and I appreciate because I think we've all have an opinion here, and part of our journey. This is something that has crossed our minds, but in general, overall, too. So I don't want to think I'm trying to put you on the spot. If you just want to talk about generalities and how we act as a people, you don't necessarily have to talk about your own experiences if you don't want to, if you're not comfortable with that.
Hey, this is Mary. I was thinking about my experience, and I was talking about it earlier today, and it's totally different. I knew that racism was out there. I knew that we had a place and we were supposed to stay at our place. And living in the country in Blythewood, we kind of were sheltered from a lot of the things that a lot of other people experienced. And then being in a Black school, experiencing integration in the 11th grade, and being pepper, just a pinch of pepper, because there was only one Black student to every class. But I didn't feel the intimidation. I didn't feel less than because of my earlier teachings. Then I went to Benedict. So again, Black surrounding. And then when I became an adult and graduated, I ended up, in Fairfield County, again, predominantly Black, and in a position where, I don't know, I know it was there, but I wasn't experienced. And I have to say that the church upbringing helped me out a lot, because my first thought is, okay, from what I thought I knew, is that I am one of God's chosen people, and no weapon formed against me shall prosper. So when people did do things, I didn't take it as them discriminating against me. I just felt like they were just trying to attack me, but that's okay because they weren't going to succeed. And because of that, I was able to flourish in Fairfield County. Now, when I went to Greenville, totally different, but guess what? The same mentality, and I was able to rise above, because Greenville is totally different. The mindset is totally different, but it didn't keep me. And even though those people were how they were, I didn't see it as prejudice. I just saw them as them having a problem, not me, had nothing to do with me. And I was able to flourish in Greenville. So now I'm back in Richland. So I just want to share that. I don't know, it has a lot to do with your surroundings and your upbringing, because I saw the marches on TV and all that, but because I lived in the country, we didn't experience that. So we were sheltered. And I just pray for those other people that have gone through that, because everybody is different and my mentality is totally different. I want to say I attribute most of my thoughts, my upbringing, to the church by scriptures that I thought I was repeating that made sense to me, that helped me to rise above the situation. And the fact that I was a social worker, so I was that gave me another step up. So I just want to share that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate you sharing that with us. Appreciate all you guys
Ron,
sharing that with us.
can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm ready to get outside of here. I got something to say right quick. I'm checking out now. But in the churches, even now, when white people come, our own color make them feel like they're less than. And I've been right in the midst of it when they throw hints that the white man didn't do this, or the white man didn't do that, and these extra people, the white people, have actually joined the church, and they be sitting in there, and they make them feel really bad. They make us feel bad because of the way they do it, and it comes from leadership. Excuse me, it comes from the head. So I guess it goes both ways.
Okay, I have to admit now that was new to me. I have not experienced that. I have experienced just the opposite. A white person comes to church and people bending over backwards to accommodate them and make them feel welcome. And but I haven't heard. That's the first I've heard. The opposite thing happening. So, but thank you for sharing. Yes, sir.
What Kathy is talking about is it's a new thing. It comes from those guys who are wannabes. They want to be blacker than black and don't know what they're talking about. And they use that to bully people. That is one of the most disgraceful things that I've heard in churches when that is done. Because when they get into meetings with white people, they go in there with their head in their hand. But when they have them in a place like as the church, for example, I guarantee you, if Harvey Pillar walk in that church, nobody ain't gonna talk about what black folk or what white folk did to black folk. It just depends on who the white person is. And the one who is in that pulpit is the weakest one in the place and has least concern about black folk, period. And I can go further than that, but I won't at this time. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yeah, I was hoping to generate a discussion. I wonder sometimes when I was looking up different articles on Stockholm syndrome and some of the coping mechanisms of that, and I wonder some of our relationships that we have in our communities. Someone mentioned it briefly earlier, like the color of the skin, or how we treat people. We fall into the class thing, and we treat each other worse than anybody else could.
I want to speak
I'm
to
sorry.
that now, if I may.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay. Mary was speaking about the church. The church is what kept us alive. The church is what kept us having hope. The church is what helped us hold on to our confidence that we were not what we were. We were not what we were told we are. The church did that. I don't take anything from that. The church had us to do recitations because they wanted to teach us how to do public speaking and to give us confidence in what we were saying. And I embraced that, and I am very thankful for that. The idea of having been us feeling like we are less than, when Catherine brought up what she did about what happens, the person who is trying to belittle the white person already feels like they are less than. And they feel like they have to publicly ridicule somebody in order to make themselves feel equal to or greater than, which is sick within itself. There is no merit to it, and there's no substance to it either. The idea of the Stockholm Syndrome, let me deal with the color scheme first. One of my history teachers was from Charleston, South Carolina, Russ Adams, and his mom and dad were born in Charleston. Mom was light-skinned. Charleston had something called the Brown Bag Society. His mama was a member of it, but his daddy could not be united with Russ. And the Brown Bag Society, you had to be light and bright and damn near white in order to be in the Brown Bag Society. And the purpose of it is no different than a lot of our people who move into communities. The purpose of it was to do everything to be like white people and to belittle those who did not have what we had. It was a double whammy for those who were not in the quote unquote class culture or did not have money. It was a double whammy because you got it from the light and bright and down there white, and also you got it from the people with money as well as white people. So the people who were living just above poverty or in poverty were the ones who were damned the most. As far as the Stockholm Syndrome is concerned, that it was very, very evident in the Black community, especially with those who were apologists for what white people were doing to us and still doing. Those who would say things like, all you have to do is obey what the police say and they won't, and they will not hurt you until they were the ones who were the victims of it. And the Stockholm Syndrome was also seen early in the late, I guess, the late 70s, when Black people started being able to move into white communities and leaving the other Africans behind. They were in their minds more tuned to the white church, the white political establishment, the white everything. They were more tuned to that, and they embraced it more. The Stockholm Syndrome, the first time that I really paid that any attention was with Patty Hearst. Patty Hearst, daddy owned Hearst, a news media publishing company, a conglomerate of newspapers. And she was supposedly have been kidnapped with, I forget the name of the group, the revolutionary group, in a bank heist. And she defended her captors. And that's when they attributed the Stockholm Syndrome to her, when in essence, she was not suffering from the Stockholm Syndrome. She was actually a part of the group, and believe Symbionese Liberation Army. They actually believed she actually bought into what they were fighting for. Now, with us as a people, the Stockholm syndrome is when we care more about what we are doing to emulate white people than we care about our people who are suffering. That is definitely Stockholm syndrome, because that is definitely not the way of the African. And those of us who grew up in the earlier years knew that that was not the way of the African, because we saw each other taking care of each other, regardless of what you had. We felt obligated to help each other get through hard times. And people who I remember, there were people who would borrow sugar. They would borrow anything from us. There were people who my grandmama cooked for, some because they didn't have food, and some because they were sick. So the Stockholm syndrome, I got mine, and you have to get yours. That was the attitude, and still is the attitude of a lot of people who look like us. The church itself, the Black church itself, is suffering from the Stockholm syndrome. Would you mute your phones, please? The church itself is suffering from that because everything white people do, the church makes the effort to do it as well. And you're making those efforts to do it. For example, our churches had service on Sunday morning, and when white people got Sunday school classrooms, our churches got them. When white people got gyms, our churches got them. When white people got vans, our churches got them. But before there were vans to pick people up, there were people in the neighborhood who had cars that would take people to church and bring them back home. So this whole idea of what was mentioned yesterday, and I do admit, I did not hear it when it was mentioned in regards to if all white people fell off the face of the earth, we would be trying to get them back in 2 weeks. That part I didn't hear, but the response that Barbara gave about we don't want anybody to fall off the face of the earth, I heard that part. However, to make a statement like we would be trying to get them back, that in itself is definitely the Stockholm syndrome, because what we're saying is that you cannot function without the people who enslave you, the people who has been barbaric towards you and see no value in your life or your existence unless you can bring monetary value to them. That's definitely a Stockholm syndrome, to feel like that your survival is not possible without somebody oppressing you. And in your mindset, when you say things like that, that is saying to me that you don't think that you are oppressed. You are no different than that person who worked in the fields with you and would tell when there was a slavery vote being planned or an escape. That kind of attitude, it was like the person, when I grew up, they used to say that there are Black folk in our community who think that they will buy the ice from the white man because they think the white man's ice is colder than the Black man's ice. That in itself was saying in a different way that there are people who are suffering from the Stockholm syndrome. And that is a very, very dangerous thing. And that speaks volumes about what you think about yourself. It is a denial of your African heritage. It is a denial of who you were created to be. And it definitely speaks to the idea of being ashamed of who you are. And when I grew up, my dark skin was ridiculed. And it hurt me until my cousin, I guess about 4 or 5 years old, said to me, don't let them bother you. Don't let that bother you. You chocolate, but you're handsome, and you got pretty teeth. And after that, that was it. It didn't bother me anymore about the color of my skin, but it shouldn't have bothered me in the first place. But it was because of people who thought that the lighter you are, the closer you are to being white. And the closer you are to being white, the better you are. That attitude still prevails to this day. So I guess in essence, that what I'm making every effort to say is that the reason that Stockholm syndrome exists is because we don't know who we are. And I'm not talking about the spiritual essence of who we are. I'm talking about the physical origin of us. I'm talking about the historical reality of us. I have been asked to be a part of a lecture series during February, which is deemed to be Black History Month. I'm asked to do that, and there were questions from some of the people who are white who raised the question: why is it that you're going to talk about the Kushite kingdom, and that does not involve the Black people who were forcibly brought to this country? Why are you not talking about the Ghana Empire or the Ghanaian Empire? And that in itself is ignorance, because without the Kushite kingdom, there would not be a Ghanaian empire. So I say all that to say this: we have bought so much into the belief that our history started at the shores of this country, that our history started with the transatlantic slave trade. We have been taught that our history and our destiny has always been to be slaves. Well, I have never been a slave, and my ancestors were never slaves. They were enslaved, but they were never slaves. And that's a huge difference. However, when you make a statement that you'll be begging them to come back in 2 weeks, you are a slave. You are not just enslaved, you have a slave mentality. So having said all of that, I'm done unless there are questions or comments. Thank you for the opportunity to say what I had to say.
Questions, y'all? Comments? The reason I felt it necessary to come back there, some pastors answered most of it, but this describes a lot of where we are as a people, and that to me is extremely important. And I agree with Pastor. It points to the fact that we have no idea who we are, and I appreciate the honesty of everybody that spoke about their lives. I agree with something. A lot of what Mary said I could identify with, because the neighborhood I lived in too was a small community, but we all not only knew each other, we all went to the same church, and all of us went to the same school, which was before integration, and that's when life was blissful, and I didn't think about it till pastors said it when we had to do speeches and whatnot in church, and they told us it's for public speaking, get you ready to, so you're not be afraid to stand up in front of people. And I'm like, wow, I never appreciated all of that at the time, but I really do still celebrate the life back then, and I remember integration and how things changed. But here we are now, this handful of people, and we are the bottom of the totem pole, and which means that we support a lot. And this is one of many things we talk about. There's probably not too much human behaviors or attitudes or even things in history that we have not addressed. We have not addressed, and that's the journey that we're on. So this too, no matter where we are individually, with this. This too would be something that we overcome. We are Elohim, and we carry this mantle, this energy, this balance we carry with us, and we carry it for all of mankind, regardless of your regardless of who you are in there. So I thought this was necessary. After I got to looking at this, I think it has a lot to do with the alcoholism and the drug abuse and the abusive behavior in our neighborhoods, and has been there for a very long time. We don't know who we are, and we've settled for being second class. And this is it. I'm sorry, somebody wanting to speak.
Yeah, when you mentioned the drug abuse and the alcoholism, that's part of the enslavement process. During the period of slavery, on the weekends, especially on Saturdays, the male slaves were forced to get drunk. If they refused to get drunk, they were punished. Some of them were beaten in the midst of all the rest of them. And the reason they forced them to get drunk was because they felt like if they were drunk and entertaining them, they would not have the opportunity to plan an uprising or plan an escape. So a lot of what we are experiencing, what we see in terms of functional alcoholics who drink on the weekend, that is a carryover from enslavement. And there are a lot of people on this phone who think, well, it's been that long and it's still there. Please understand something. Slavery did not end on paper in 1865, but slavery did not end until the late 60s. Understand that. There were slaves in Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, and South Carolina in the 60s. So a lot of this is a carryover from that. And I think that, and I'm not making excuses, I'm taking it into account. The other part of that is, I remember very clearly when I was in DC, and I remember when we were making charges that the CIA had introduced crack cocaine to the Black community in Watts in Los Angeles. And everybody said we were crazy. And the introduction of crack cocaine, and it cost them more to buy the cocaine than they were making from the crack. But they did it on purpose. And what did they do next? They moved all the jobs out of the community. So you got people who are despondent and they're trying to make a living. So that I'm not condoning what happened, but I do know why it happened. So a lot of this is manufactured by the same ones who redlined us when it came to housing, by the same ones who saw a burgeoning Black, quote unquote, middle class, who saw people in the Black community making ends meet and prospering, and therefore, especially in Baltimore, and they moved all of the auto manufacturers out of Baltimore. They moved Stetson Hat Company out of Philadelphia and other manufacturers because they were making too much money and they were doing things with their money. So a lot of the things that we are experiencing now can be attributed to the abuse that our community has endured. They did not burn the communities in Baltimore, neither did they burn them in New York or in DC. They simply took the jobs away. They didn't do what they did in Oklahoma. They simply took the jobs away and got the same results. And that is continuing to happen. And when back in the day, when Black folk were prosperous, and we went to them asking them to help support what we wanted to do in the South in particular, they they financed us. They helped us do it. Now, when Black folk are prosperous, they just take care of themselves and form organizations that excludes anybody who don't have the money that they have. Now, I mean, when you think about, there are what, 10, 12 billionaire Africans in this country, and we are still concerned about the absence of clean food in our communities. So when we look at these things, we have to ask ourselves why. The why is they allow a handful to get through and they manipulate them all the way through. And when they get their hands on something, they have conditioned them to be like them. I remember when you could not even walk in a white church on Sunday morning unless you was the janitor. And now you can't keep Black folk out of them. And the same churches that they are walking into are the churches that are the most racist towards them. The evangelical churches are the churches that they are walking into, and these churches care absolutely nothing about us. Matter of fact, they care less about us than they do their dogs and cats. So there are so many variables in this. And you're absolutely right, Ron. We don't know who we are. And the reason we don't, and I'm not talking about spiritual right now, and then the reason we don't is because of the education we received. And when pastors went to college and started acting like white preachers, now when you stand up in a Black church and you talk about a Cushite kingdom, they tell you that Cush was Black, so the Cushite supposed to be servants. They tell you when you stand up in a Black church and tell them that Israel does not exist because it doesn't exist in the scriptures, they tell you, man, that there has been conflict between the Arab and the Jews forever. No, there have never been Jews and still aren't none on the earth. So all of these things are variables that plays into what we are seeing that's detrimental in our community. Am I giving us a pass? No, I'm not. But I do see what's going on, and I do understand that every bit of it has been orchestrated by the same ones who say we stand with Israel no matter what happens. I'm done. Thank you.
Can I just add to that? This is Audrey. I kind of feel like, can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Hello?
We hear you, but do you hear us?
Audrey, we hear you.
Oh, okay. I guess I went out at some point there. Anyway,
Audrey, you went out.
Audrey, we can't hear you.
Stockholm syndrome probably exists more in the last, I don't know, 50 years than it did back during the end of slavery and all that. Because, and I say that because even though people had to do what they needed to do to survive, they knew that they couldn't rely on white folks to do anything for them. So they kind of had to know who they were, even though they didn't know, they may not have known who they were in a spiritual sense. They kind of knew who they were in terms of, you know, supporting their family and making a living for their family, and literally pulling themselves up under their own effort. But I guess after integration and after all of that, when we began to sort of forget our own history, And we started to feel like we needed to play the game to be able to survive. And it was still about survival, I think. But I think it probably exists more in the latter years than it did in the, I mean, in the former, which one's good? In the former years than it did in the beginning. But my question is, where does forgiveness play in all of this? Do we forgive those people who are suffering from Stockholm syndrome and then sort of educate them? And then move forward? Because if there's suffering from that and genuinely suffering from that, then they need to have some kind of intervention so that they can realize it and then get past it. So where does forgiveness play in all of that? That's my question.
It has to be forgiveness. Identifying what the problem is the great thing. But the greatest thing is understanding that forgiveness is definitely in order. Restoration comes through forgiveness. And I do believe that one of the reasons that we are talking about this is because we are at that place of forgiveness so that we can move forward. Because if we cannot forgive ourselves or each other, we cannot forgive anyone who sought to destroy us. So forgiveness begins at home, and then it goes beyond that.
Right. So we can't really, I mean, even though we see it as Stockholm syndrome, we have to forgive those people and sort of put in the macro so they have a realization, and then and hopefully they have a realization that they need to look inside themselves to figure out who they are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I think we're talking about it, because we have to do that. You know, if you've been indoctrinated all your life and you not had the opportunity to learn about who you are, and I'm not talking about spiritual at this point, then it is those who know who they are obligated to share that with others, regardless of how much pushback they get. That is an obligation. That is a major responsibility. And it might not be you, the individual, who can get through to someone, but it's always someone they'll listen to. So absolutely, I agree with that.
I just want to interject too, as she was talking, I thought about, when Jesus said, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. They think they're doing the right thing, but just forgive them and help them to come to an understanding of who they are, and we forgive them for what they're doing. That's my thought. This Mary, I'm sorry. That's it.
Thank you, Mary. And I think Audrey and Pastor, you guys hit it right on the head. We are representation of the human who has suffered and who has gone through all of this, and we are also the forgiveness of it. What I see, part of what I see in this conversation is there is nothing that has happened in this earth to the human that has not taken place on this soil. There is no type of abuse that has not taken place on this soil. And I'm talking about in the history of mankind. So we are right in the middle of this. It is no coincidence that we are here, as Pastor has pointed out many times before, the history of South Carolina. It is no coincidence that we are having this conversation. And you're absolutely right. Forgiveness has to start with us. And what better place to start than with the African? And as has been stated, people do what they have to survive. People do what they have to, whether it's drinking too much, whether it's putting a needle in your arm, whether whatever you have to do to make it to the next day. We've seen it with our people. And a lot of it has been extremely abusive because that's what we've been taught. And that is the danger of not knowing our history and only knowing our history on these shores. But here we stand, this group of people that's on this phone, and we have a tremendous responsibility. And all we've talked about when we talk about the age sense and looking at yourself, looking at your plight, looking at your journey, and we bring all this stuff in. We bring it together, and you recognize the light that is there. You recognize the wound that you have that is open because you have taken the journey that we have been embarking on the last few years to wholeness. And now we are filling that cavity. We're filling that wound. And this is where we are. We're filling it with love and compassion and forgiveness. So we are not less than. You are not less than. Regardless of your education, regardless of how much money you make, this is measured by your heart and how much love you have, how much compassion you have for mankind. Mm-hmm. That's why we have a conversation. So I love you. I love the group that's on this phone and what we take on. And I think this indeed has a purpose. And great discussion. If there's any other part of this that we have not unraveled, I don't know what it is. But it was frustrating to me to see family members or friends that don't seem to care about who they are or moving on. And I know why. And my frustration now is love. It's empathy. But I understand. I do understand. But thank you. Thank you for the discussion. Anyone else? Questions or comments?
Ron, may I share a scripture with you, please?
Of course.
With the group. I was thinking, I said, man, why now? What's going on? And I'm learning. I'm still working on meditating, but I still feel like I know I have a connection. Not feel like it. So Ecclesiastes 3:1 came, and it says, everything that happens in this world happens at the time God chooses. So when we sit and question, what's going on? What next? Why this? Well, God chose it to happen at this time, if I'm understanding this scripture correctly. Am I understanding it correctly? Is there another thought to it that I'm missing? Please help.
I don't think so, but will you read it one more time for us, please?
Okay. Ecclesiastes 3:1. I don't know what version this is. Everything that happens in this world happens at the time God chooses.
I like that. Who is God?
That's within us. That's us. That's the universe.
What version is that, Mary?
Huh?
What version is that?
I have, let me see. It just showed up. I'm looking now. I don't know. Oh, what is GNT? Whatever that is, it's just something that GNT. I've never heard of GNT before, so I don't know what that means. Good News Translation? I don't know. I don't know what GNT is.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like good
But
news.
what's in NIV and the, I can find that myself, NIV.
Is that the one that says to every season? That one?
Yes,
Everything has a
it's
season.
Ecclesiastes 3. Yeah, so I don't know where that just showed up on my feed. So, and when I saw it, because I was thinking about, all these things are going to wars and stuff like that, and it's saying, okay, deaths, births, all that. It's Ecclesiastic, so it's talking about to everything there is a season. So I think that's where it is. That was interesting that it read that way, because I'm trying my best to try to look through it through a spiritual eye and not just through the natural as I have been taught. So I have a lot of stuff to reprogram in my mind.
To everything there's a season and a time to every purpose under the heavens.
Yes.
So it's talking about a time that has been appointed for things to happen, that things are purposed to happen. And Ron asked a question: who is God?
We're God. I'm God. We're God.
Which means that we determine when it happens.
Read that next verse, Pastor.
Wow.
A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up that which is planted. And it goes on, the time to kill, to heal, etc. So all it's saying, in essence, is that all of our experiences and everything that occurs has an appointed time to do so. That appointed time is the time that has been appointed by God. Well, God doesn't live in the midst of time. We do. It's no different than when Evelyn yesterday said, I think it was yesterday, but anyway, Evelyn spoke about the crow taking down the flag of Israel and the cat pulling it off the wall. Actually, I saw that. And my response was, it may or may not be true, but it doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is because if we are dominators in this earth, then we are the ones who determine how things happen in this earth that's going to benefit humanity. And there's no doubt in our mind that when a flag is taken down, the authority of that nation is gone. It has been defeated. So if we can determine whether someone did a Photoshop on it or not, it doesn't matter. What matters is, why did you see it? Did Evelyn see it because she was supposed to bring it to us so we could make determinations about it? Yes. Otherwise, she wouldn't have seen it. And what am I saying? It is the determination that we have come to is that the authority of those imposters who are in Palestine has come to an end. It's time for it to happen. It's time to pluck up that which was planted. And we're not talking about seeds that have been planted physically. We are talking about the seeds of destruction, the seeds of chaos, the seeds of a disdain for the life of people who don't look like you. That is time for it to be dug up. And by virtue of our determining that the authority is gone, that time is now. Questions, comments, or am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. I remember when we watched that young woman climb the flagpole in Columbia and take down that Confederate flag. We said right then and there, it's done, it's down. That's all. It's never going to be put up again. And it came
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
I remember feeling chills when we watched that. That was awesome.
The thing about it is that we never really watched TV. So I think Z-Money came and told it was being done. Yeah.
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 And it was a woman who went up the flag.
Yes,
Flag.
absolutely. Which means feminine energy is the vanguard, really, in terms of the direction and guidance for the birthing of redemption in this earth.
Great discussion, guys. And I think, yes, sir. Go ahead.
I want to say something before we go.
Oh,
Maybe. Okay, Babylon is the true name of Africa. And the reason it was changed to Africa instead of Kabbalah, allowing it to be a Kabbalah, is because a Kabbalah means the garden of life or the womb of life. Both of those are what a Kabbalah means. If we call it Africa, then there's no energy in Africa, in the word Africa. There's no power in it at all because it's a made-up thing from the minds of those who sought to destroy as much of Africa as it could and use all the resources for his benefit and greed. A Kabbalah means garden of life. So if a Kabbalah is the garden of life, and the archaeologists agree that all human life came from the womb of a woman in Africa. So when we talk about returning to beginning, we're talking about returning to a Kabbalah, the place where all life was birthed. So when we use the term a Kabbalah, we are actually making a pathway for everyone to return to the origin of life. And returning to the origin of life grants a greater opportunity to see the mirror of self and understanding who you are and embracing the attributes that are buried in the womb of a Kabbalah. Having those attributes birthed in us, in those who embrace it. So it is imperative, I do believe, that a Kabbalah be put in the macro and the understanding of a Kabbalah in the macro, so that not only will we have an opportunity to return to beginning, but also the energy of a Kabbalah will grant those whose ancestors are out of a Kabbalah, especially the ones who are deemed to be Africans, opportunity to dig deep in self and see the ancestral connections that we have and see the inherent power that was granted us to bring this earth to a place of balance and to bring into existence a spiritual kingdom on this earth, a nation of people who are submissive to the God that they were created to be, as well as being submissive to the universe from which it came. So I say this at this time about Akebalon because our whole discussion this evening has been centered around the things that we have been indoctrinated with that rendered us powerless spiritually, and actually teased us to make us think we had political power. Akebalon embraces that, shows us that the power is not political, the power is spiritual. The vote does not guide spirituality. Spirituality guides the vote. The determination of the manifestation of spirituality does not come from a committee in a room. It comes from the creator of everything that is. And if the creator of everything that is made the decision that Akebalon would be the place of life, and everything else, every other tract of land broke away from, separated from Akebalon. And just as every tract of land separated from Akebalon, so that the principles of Akebalon go with those tracts of land. The separation of those tracts of land was a separation of spiritual consciousness also. And spiritual consciousness had to be separated in that manner so that the inhabitants, the offsprings of Akebalon, would be in a position to make as below, so is as above, so is below, by virtue of transforming those spiritual principles, those principles that broke away from the womb of its origin. And it was manifested in the land masses that broke away from its origin. So when we look at the manifestation of these land masses that we call continents, we are looking at, in a spiritual sense, a manifestation of the separation of spiritual essence, or spiritual beliefs rather, I'm sorry. And to understand that principle and see it with the eye, as opposed to seeing continents with the eyes, see it with the eye. That in itself becomes the needle and thread that brings, that sews it back together, that sutures the wounds, the wounds that separated it, brings it back to be one. So it is imperative that we embrace the reality. Even if you say Africa, you in your soul know that you're saying Africa out of habit, but Akebalon is what you really mean. Because Akebalon is the source itself of life in this earth. And embracing that means that we embrace life in this earth. Questions, comments? Does that make sense, guys?
Yes.
So let it.
That
Yes,
really
makes sense.
resonated for me. And I feel like you just planted the seed that will bring about that self-awareness, and then the forgiveness that we need to give to, we need to grant to ourselves first, and then to other people. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. On this,
Yeah, I like.
go ahead, Ron.
Go ahead, Pastor. No, I'm done. I'm just
No, I was
agreeing
simply
with
going to
Audrey.
say on the 11th of November, that's when we will have our extended session on that Saturday on Zoom, so that we can talk about how we got to where we are. And in order for us to talk about how we got to where we are, we have to begin with the Kabbalah, because that is the beginning of all human life in earth. So again, Saturday, November 11th, 11/11, we will have an extended discussion as to where we are. I mean, how we got to where we are. And I believe wholeheartedly that that journey will trigger something deep in our soul that would awaken in a manner that we never believed possible or never even thought of, so that humanity can begin to be the manifestation of unicity in this earth. I'm done. Thank you.
This is Ramel. I have a question. How do you spell a Kabbalan? Is that the word?
Akebalun, I think.
Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. It's a U instead of A. Akebulun, I believe it's Akebalun. Kabbalah.
E-B?
Akebulun.
U. Okay.
Lun. Kabbalah.
Okay. Thank you.
It's actually ALKE.
Okay. ALK.
Okay,
You know what, Audrey? You know what you just did?
what's that?
L. L.
L, yeah.
Yeah. God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But did you hear me when I made my comment a couple minutes ago?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. Beautiful night. Beautiful night. Oh, any other questions or comments?
Release everything you
Okay.
received. That's it.
Yes, yes, yes. Beautiful meditation. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who spoke, your thoughts, your meditations. Thank you. So I can't wait till Saturday. Good job. Guys, have a great week. Okay?
You too. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank y'all. Bye.
Thank you.